right? But if we don't know the answer, how do we crack this question in the exam? Okay, understand one thing: when all the four options make sense, whenever you see a question where all the four options make sense, where hello everyone, welcome to CISA-This-Much. This is Aditya, and today we'll be discussing a very good question on penetration testing which recently came in the exam last week. So this question, one of my students, she shared this question with me, and this is one of the good question, and it can be quite tricky for some people because of the options mentioned in these questions. There are very few questions wherein all the four options make sense, and this is one of those questions, which can become tricky for some people, right? So I thought of discussing this question, and also there are several other reasons as well. One of the reason is this particular question, it is straight away taken from the review manual. Okay, I have discussed this a lot of times that you have to focus on the concepts, and when you're solving the Q&A, it is nothing but the application of whatever you have learned, application of whatever concepts you have studied, right? And I always say that hardly there are times when they ask you questions word to word straight from the review manual. I'm not talking about the official QA. I'm talking about the review manual. So this question is taken from the review manual as it is, right? And we'll be discussing that in detail, right? So without wasting any time, let me discuss this question. Okay, so an IS auditor, just a minute. Yeah, so an IS auditor is evaluating an organization's incident response plan in the context of penetration testing. Which of the following would be the most critical element to ensure the appropriate handling of a potential attack discovered during a simulated test? Now, I am 100% sure that there will be many people who will not even understand what the question is trying to say. Okay, so I also have the easy version of this question, which is, while conducting penetration testing, how to differentiate between the simulated attack and a real attack? And this was the question which was shared with me. So why I have taken this more difficult version is to make you understand that how they can twist the words and how they can modify the question and make a simple question look very difficult. And that would be the time when you will not be able to even understand what the question is trying to say. Okay, so before discussing more about this question and more about the concepts involved, let's discuss about what is penetration testing first of all, right? So penetration testing, it is nothing but a simulated cyber attack. It is a simulated cyber attack, not a cyber attack. Simulated cyber attack. What is the meaning of the term simulated? Simulated means a situation or event that seems real but is not real. It seems real, it is not real. It is used especially in order to help people deal with such situations or events. Okay, when I say you need to appear for the mock test, of the CISA-This-Much platform, we have a lot of mock tests, right? So when I say you need to appear for the mock test, so what I'm trying to say, I'm telling you that before going for the real exam, give a simulation exam. Because our exam, our mock test, you might be knowing about this thing that we have a lot of features which is very much similar to the official exam. Okay, so you can flag the question wherever you are getting confused. You can flag the question. You can go back from question number 120 to question number 45. You can go forward from question number 3 to question number 48. Okay, so you can move ahead, you can go ahead, you can go back, you can flag a question. You will be getting a timer in your screen. So whatever features you are having in the real exam, all the features we are having in our mock test also. So what I'm trying to say over here is that we are giving you a simulation of the real exam. Why are we giving you simulation of the real exam? So that it helps you to deal with the real exam. right? Similarly here also, why are we doing simulated cyber attack? So that when, if the real attackers are trying to access our internal systems, if real attackers are trying to exploit our internal vulnerabilities, okay, we need to understand that what are our weaknesses. Okay, we need to understand what are our loopholes, we need to understand what are our internal systems vulnerabilities, how we can improve. Okay, so if external event happens, that time we'll not be having a choice. Okay, so it is better to be prepared and improve our security controls, improve the security measures, take proactive actions instead of reactive approach. Okay, before that event occurs, why not we prepare ourselves, why not we improve our security controls, why not we improve our why not we mitigate or remediate our internal systems vulnerabilities, right? So this is the reason we are doing what we are doing, a simulated cyber attack. So we are ourselves exploiting our internal systems by getting the access, right? And we are creating this as a simulation. Okay, so this is not a real attack, this is a simulated attack, okay, against a computer system, network or web application designed to expose vulnerabilities that real attackers could exploit. So what real attackers could do, we are doing it ourselves, so that our ultimate goal, our ultimate purpose is to improve our security posture overall, right? Okay, so now understand one thing, when I'm saying penetration testing, or when I'm saying simulated cyber attack, don't you think so we need to have a proper scope defined, we need to have a proper terms and conditions defined, like when this particular activity would be undertaken, okay, through which IP these attacks would be performed. Okay, do we like, don't you think so we need a proper approval of the senior management? Okay, all these things becomes important, because understand, we are not this is not a joke. Okay, a simulation means, I mean, it is almost a real attack which we are doing in our systems. So we need to be very much what to say, we need to take proper measures before this kind of activity occurs, right? So understand, we need to have a proper scope, we need to have proper terms and conditions depending upon the clients and the requirements. Okay, now there are few conditions, few terms and conditions discussed in the review manual, and I am discussing these conditions straight away from the review manual. So these particular things, I am taking it straight away from the review manual, right? And I will be discussing each one by one. All right, so the first one is host restricted or host not to be tested. Host restricted, what does it mean? It means that we don't want the the third party pen testers. Now understand, okay, I forgot to mention you one thing. Okay, when we say penetration testing, when we say penetration testing, pen testing can be done pen testing can be done internally. Okay, I mean, if the organization is too huge, if the organization is vast, they might have their own internal department who is taking care of this penetration testing. Okay, so there could be internal department, or we can outsource this to third party testing firm. So these are this third party pen tester firm, they are the experts who will do this activity for us. So we can outsource this activity, or we can have the internal department. Okay? So we can have this by having our internal department who is being responsible for doing the penetration testing, or we can outsource this activity to a third party penetration testing firm, right? Okay, so let's discuss this one by one, terms and conditions which is mentioned in the review manual. So first one is host restricted or host not to be tested. Okay, so we can have some terms and conditions specified. We can have some exclusion list. This is nothing but exclusion list. that if you are doing this activity, please do not touch these servers. These are our, maybe like there could be some critical production servers which could be handling sensitive customer data. Okay, so like that, we don't want to have potential disruption. Okay, we don't want to hamper our day-to-day business operations, so we may have one exclusion list saying that if you're doing this penetration testing, please do not touch these servers, please do not touch these machines, because this particular server is handling very sensitive information, very sensitive customer data, and we don't want to get into trouble, so please do not touch these things. So exclusion list. Second thing, what they're saying, acceptable testing techniques, that is social engineering, denial of service, distributed denial of service, SQL injection, etc. Okay, so we can have few techniques mentioned in the terms and conditions, that please do not go for the denial of service, because denial of service might have impact on our business operations, so please do not go for that particular method. Okay, our purpose or our goal is to look at how much educated, how much aware our employees are with respect to security measures, so we want to check them. So please conduct a phishing simulation. Okay, so we can specify the techniques which we want to use which we want to use for having a pen testing. Okay, so even that can be mentioned in the scope, in the terms and conditions. Acceptance of proposed methodology from management. When I say management, here management means that top management, the senior management. So acceptance, don't you think so? This is very, very important. Before conducting this penetration testing, we need to have proper appropriate approvals from the senior management. Otherwise, you cannot do this. This is basically, we are kind of simulating a real attack. Okay, and it can have severe consequences if proper approvals are not taken. Okay. Next thing, timing of attack simulation, that is business hours, off hours. Maybe you can conduct this activity during a month or during a week wherein you have very less work pressure, wherein for example I'm sorry, for example, maybe December end. We all know that December end, December third week, December fourth week is normally hardly things happens in the organization, and we know that most of the people, they are on holidays. There would hardly be any meetings, so even the business operations would not be that much high because of the holidays. Okay, so I mean, what I'm trying to say over here is that we normally do not conduct penetration testing during the business hours, because we do not want to disrupt our business operations. That's a simple logic. We do not want we do not want to have any unwanted impact. Okay, so to avoid any trouble, okay, we will by default choose non-business hours, off hours, non-peak hours, non-peak period. Okay, a month or a week wherein the work pressure is low, or maybe the office is on holiday, so those kind of period, maybe weekends. Okay, so understand, we will not be impacting our business because of this particular thing, right? And it makes sense, right? Next thing, IP address of the source of attack simulation, to identify between the approved simulated attack and actual attack. IP address of the source of attack simulation. So this means that before, as I've already mentioned, so the third party testing firm, or maybe the internal department, they will straight away, they will tell you in this would be pre-approved that if these attack will happen, this attack will happen from this particular IP range. Okay, so the source of the IP from where this attack is being done, that would be specified, that would be mentioned. Okay, this would be pre-approved. Okay, you're already mentioning that from this particular range, from this particular range only the attack will happen. Okay, and here review manual, they themselves have told, in the bracket, so I'm not saying this, they themselves have mentioned in the bracket to identify between approved simulated attack. What is approved simulated attack? Approved means proper approved by senior management. Simulated, I have already discussed it seems to be real but it's not real. Okay, and actual attack, to identify or to distinguish between. Okay, now I'm sure that in some people's mind, this thing would definitely come. So what about double blind testing? What about blind testing? We have double blind testing also, wherein the attackers are not informed about the organization's network, organization's internal system. They don't have much information about the organization's IT infrastructure. Also, in double blind testing, even the security departments, the internal department also do not have much information about this activity to be happened, the pen testing activity which would be happening. So even they are not informed, so both parties are not informed much. But understand one thing, I'll be discussing this question again. So right now we are not discussing this question, we are just learning about the pen testing. But in this question, in this particular question, they have not mentioned about the double blind testing. And also this question is in generic, it is in general they're asking. So do not assume things, because understand one thing, double blind testing is expensive also. When you are saying that the attackers will not be given much information, neither attackers will be given information nor the internal departments will be given information. So don't you think so that particular activity will become more expensive? It will require more efforts, more time, more cost. Why? Because the hard work would increase, right? Because if information is already given to you, things becomes easy for both of them, the attackers as well as the internal departments. But if the information is not provided, that will definitely have what, the cost will increase, the budget will increase, the time will increase, efforts will increase, right? So normally by default, organization might not go for those kind of thing. So if that is why I'm discussing about this double blind testing, is because there would be few people who would argue, or in their mind this thing will come. Okay, what about double blind testing? Why are we disclosing this fact that we are doing this particular test on this particular hour by this particular source IP? Why the hell are we discussing? Because in general that happens. Okay, so that double blind testing, that's an exception, right? But here in this question is not talking about that. I'll be again discussing this question in detail, right? So I mean, I just wanted to discuss that, if that is making you confused, so do not assume that thing in this particular question, right? Okay, so I think we are here. Yeah, so IP address of the source of the attack simulation to identify between the approved simulated attack and actual attack. Next thing is handling of information collected by the penetration tester or auditor. That is a non-disclosure agreement, NDA. This is very much common. We have discussed in the past also that when you are conducting penetration testing, you will be getting a lot of informations. So all these data are confidential, so no party will disclose this information, right? So even the testers, the auditors, they are not supposed to disclose this fact. So we'll be having what, non-disclosure agreement for that, right? So these are some of the terms and conditions mentioned in the review manual, and they themselves have mentioned for like the source IP, that this is particular to identify between the approved simulated attack and the real attack. And again I'll be discussing again the other reasons as well. So before that, okay, here one more thing is mentioned, no single factor is perfect. So let's get back to the question once again. Okay, so let's discuss this question once again and let's go much deeper. Okay, so let me first discuss a difficult version of this question. An IS auditor is evaluating an organization's incident response plan in the context of penetration testing. Which of the following would be the most critical element to ensure the appropriate handling of a potential attack? If potential attack happens discovered during a simulated test, so when the simulated activity is being happened, how do we differentiate, how to distinguish whether that particular attack is a part of the penetration testing or whether that particular activity is a part of the real attack. The real attack is actually happening in our system. So how do we differentiate that? So this is what the question is trying to say. Okay. So the first option over here is timing of the attack. So as we have already discussed, normally we do it during the non-business hour, non-peak hours, right? So let's say if any activity happens during the business hours, if any event has occurred, because logs would be generated. So based on the logs, we see, okay, this particular activity, this particular event has happened during the business hours. Okay, this particular activity has happened during the business hours. So that could mean that this is not a part of a simulated activity, but rather it's a part of the real attack. Option number B, source of IP address. So even the source of IP address would be mentioned in advance, right? If the attack is happening, the attack would happen from this particular to this particular range of IP addresses. So if attack is happening from a range which is beyond that particular range mentioned, so it could mean that a real attack is being happened. But again, this thing can come in your mind, then what about IP spoofing? Because attackers can even spoof the IP address, right? If I want to spoof IP address, I mean, if the attacker wants to do that, they can do that as well. There is a chance for that as well, right? Okay, now I'll be discussing why. Okay, that is true, and that's the reason I have told you, in the just 3 minutes back, that there is no single factor, because in the practical world, in the real life, there would be the combination of factors which would be used to make the decision whether it's a real attack or it's a fake attack. Okay, you cannot just rely on one particular this thing, right? But from the exam angle, we need to understand how to solve a question, and the logic also of the ISACA, the correct ISACA mindset also, that also I'll be discussing. Okay, but understand one thing, in real world, in real life, there cannot be a single factor for the decision. There has to be, we need to use combination of factors over here. Okay, just a second, so let me discuss that also here. Okay, no single factor is perfect. There is no single factor that always works. Security teams need to stay vigilant and use these techniques together to minimize the risk of confusing a simulated attack with the real one. Whitelisting the penetration tester's known IP address. Okay, why are they giving the source IP address? Why this third party pen testing firm, why are they giving the source IP address? Okay, one of the reason is what they want the security team to whitelist this IP from the firewalls, from the intrusion prevention systems, so that the internal departments do not get panic, and they get to know that this particular traffic is coming from this activity which is happening in the organizations as of now, and this is not a real attack happening. So that's the reason, right? So whitelisting the pen testers known IP address, security systems can immediately distinguish. Okay, the reason is security systems can immediately distinguish their authorized activity from a potential real world attack. Okay, so this, whatever we have discussed, this is a part of the what will happen in the real world. Okay, but again, let's come back to the question, how to identify the right answer over here. Okay, let me discuss the easy version also, which is the while conducting pen testing, how to differentiate between simulated attack and a real attack. Option number A, timing of the attack. Option number B, source of IP address, same. The options are same, whatever we have discussed in the past. Okay. Restricted source host IP address is what? Again, we have discussed, we are restricting few servers. Please do not touch these servers. These carry sensitive data. So if activity or event occurs in those sensitive servers, it means that there can be a chance that this particular activity is happening from the real attacker. Okay, and the type of attack, so whatever we have mentioned in our terms and conditions, if the attack is happening beyond that particular list, okay, with a new technique, it can also mean that a real attack is being happened. But understand one thing, all the four options make sense. All the four options are mentioned in the review manual, but review manual, they themselves have mentioned that answer should be source of the IP address, because that is given in the bracket. Like if you go here, that is given in the bracket. That is one of the reasons to identify between the approved simulated attack and the actual attack. But understand one thing, normally, as I've told you, hardly question comes word to word from the review manual. This is one of the exception, right? But if we don't know the answer, how do we crack this question in the exam? Okay, understand one thing, when all the four options make sense, whenever you see a question where all the four options make sense, where all the four options looks correct, you need to apply which concept? You need to apply that, okay, it means that all the four are the good options. I mean, all are the right answers, but we need to understand which is the best of the best option. So for that, we need to go deep and understand the primary purpose of that particular condition. So when I say option number A, timing of the attack, what is the primary condition? The primary purpose of doing this activity in the non-business hours is we don't want to disrupt our day-to-day business operation. We want to ignore, we want to avoid any unwanted thing to happen in our internal environment. So we don't want to disrupt our day-to-day business operation. So that is the primary purpose when we are saying timing of the attack. Simple logic. Okay, let's say you want to study for CISA exam. Normally when will you study a lot? You will study during the weekends, because weekends is a time when you are having more time in your hand. Definitely you will be putting more hours during the weekends than the weekdays. Similarly here also, we need to understand that in the end we are there to, we cannot hamper our business because of this thing. So security should not hamper the business. Understand this thing. Business is always first. Okay, IT security is secondary. In the end, our ultimate goal of the senior management is to run the business, get the profit, right? But in the end, we need to follow the regulations. We need to have a proper security controls. So for having those things, we need to have, audit. So to have all these things, we are doing this penetration testing, but that should not impact the business. So primary reason is what? The primary reason is we don't want to disrupt our business operations. That's the primary purpose. Okay, secondary usage of this thing is that it can help us. Okay, if attack is happening during the business hours, it means it's a real attack happening. But the primary reason is not that. Option number C, source restricted host IP address. Restricted host, again, what is the primary purpose? I have discussed the primary purpose of doing the restriction is we don't want to touch some sensitive servers which is actually carrying some maybe like PII, personally identifiable information. It might have PII, okay, sensitive customer data. Maybe we might have data privacy laws. Okay, we don't want to get into trouble by touching and taking the huge risk of attacking our sensitive servers. So that is the primary purpose, right? So C, primary purpose, is different. Okay, option number D is the type of the attack. What is the primary purpose? The primary purpose is, okay, to fulfill our requirements. So as I've told you, let's say you want to check how much educated or how much aware our employees are. So we are doing what? Phishing simulation. Okay, so accordingly the technique what we're using, that depends on the client's requirements. Okay, so that is the primary purpose. Okay, what is the primary purpose of source of the IP address? The primary purpose of the source of the IP address is that because this is pre-approved, it is clearly mentioned in the terms and conditions. This is pre-approved. They are giving you the range of IP address through which this particular attack would be happening. Okay, so what does it mean? That the primary purpose of B is much more closer to this particular question than the other points. I'm not saying the other points will not help you, but option number B is more close to fulfilling our question's requirements. So question requirements is different. So to fulfill the question requirements, option number B is giving us more data. Okay, and I mean that's the main primary reason of listing the source IP address is to make the internal teams being aware that if traffic is coming from this particular IP range, it means a simulated activity is being happened. But don't you think so? Can attackers also can spoof the IP address? But the possibility is less of that happening. Okay, and again, I'm telling you, do not take extreme assumptions in the exam. The question is in generic sense, so we cannot take extreme assumptions. Okay, and also when all the four options is making sense, we need to make a rational decision and get to the option which is making more sense to the question being asked. So option number A, C, D also is the right answer, but it is not having the primary purpose of what the question is asking. But option number B is fulfilling the primary purpose, or it is fulfilling whatever the question is trying to ask you, which is how would we differentiate between the simulated attack and a real attack. So answer is option number B, which is source of the IP address. Okay, I hope everyone has understood this question. Okay, thank you so much.